If you saw my other review on this, it's called Men of Tomorrow, Geeks, Gangsters, and the Birth of the Comic Book. I recommended this book, and I'll just delve into a couple of pages of a chapter here that's really interesting, and it deals with the origin of Batman. And it's quite different than what you think. And let me read it. And it'll give you an idea of if this is something you would like to read or buy and look more into. You can check out the writing style and some of the history here. And it starts here. In late 1938, with a hit on his hands in Superman, Vince Sullivan, that was the editor, started asking all his contributors to bring in ideas for costume heroes. He particularly wanted one as a cover feature for Detective Comics. Some sort of crime solver who would fit the theme, but tap into the fantastical appeal of Superman. Among those he talked to was Bob Kane, who was now selling him 2 series a month, but still looking for something to attract real attention. Sullivan told him about the Superman newspaper strip and said Siegel and Schuster could be making thousands of dollars a month soon. It was Friday. Kane said he'd be back with a new hero on Monday. Kane and Finger told different versions of what happened next. Kane in fact told several versions himself, the earlier ones excluding Bill Finger entirely. The later ones under pressure from fans who kept finding more evidence of Finger's involvement, acknowledging a small contribution from a friend. Kane would even go so far as to forge sketches that he supposedly drew in January 1934 at the age of 13, showing a Batman, a Hawkman, and an Eagleman inspired by Leonardo da Vinci's sketches of a wing-like flying machine. So he tried to prove not only that Finger hadn't helped him, but that he couldn't even have been inspired by the Birdman and Flash Gordon, which he'd already cited as an influence in interviews. In one absurdly pat document, Kane lied about his age, stole Finger's credit, placed himself in the Renaissance tradition, and nicked a bit of glamour from the men who created Hawkman. It's likely that Kane did first go off and work on ideas by himself. The only recent cover of Action featuring Superman was the 7th issue, which showed the smugly smiling hero leaping over a city street in apparent flight, towering a crook by his ankle. That billowing cape and exuberant sense of flight may have impressed itself on Kane as the feature to imitate. He dug into his Flash Gordon clippings where he knew another red-caped hero could be found, and considered Alex Raymond's beautifully drawn Birdman. He may have remembered Da Vinci's artificial wings from art school, or thought of the frame and canvas wings of early gliders. That night or the next day, he got together with his friend Bill Finger and showed him what may have been the last thing created by Bob Kane alone, a red-garbed crime fighter with mechanical wings called Bird-Man. Finger didn't think it was good for a detective comic. He suggested they think more along the lines of the Shadow in the pulps, nocturnal, secretive, dark-cloaked. How about the Bat-Man? Bats were a common pulp image. One of Harry Donenfale's own pulps, in fact, had featured a villain called Batman, and there were pulp crime fighters named the Bat and the Black Bat. Kane and Finger worked out a spooky figure in gray and black, with a cape ribbed and scalloped, an eared cowl, and eyes appearing only as sharp white slits. They put the outline of a bat on his chest in imitation of Superman's S, and gave him a utility belt just like Doc Savage's. Like the Green Hornet and the Shadow of radio and the original Phantom of the newspapers, he was secretly a bored young socialite. He had no origin. He was simply a mysterious and adventurous figure, fighting for righteousness and apprehending the wrongdoer. Kane took the sketches to Vince Sullivan on Monday morning, and Sullivan approved the strip as a monthly 6-page feature. Kane brought the good news to Bill Finger without mentioning whatever long-term deal he'd signed, and Finger went to work for a piece of the page right. He was an exacting and conscientious craftsman, and it shows in the tight efficiency of his story, so different from the hurtling action of a Siegel and Schuster plot. From Finger's first script, Batman was a perfect formula. The art was flat and stiff, the faces changed from panel to panel, as though Kane was swiping from different sources or someone else were touching up the art. But what Bob Kane did well was the most important thing. He made the figure of the Batman fascinating. What was lacking in Kane's pages was provided by the cover. Against an eternal skyline, the Batman, a crook in his grasp, swoops through the air by a rope. The image is too elegant to have been executed by Kane. He knew the kind of art Batman required. Perhaps Kane conceived the design, perhaps not. But whoever did so clearly understood the romance implicit in the Batman. The hero swinging on a rope was a swashbuckling staple. A pulp cover had already shown the shadow swinging over New York. But on this cover the hero floats against an empty sky, his rope stretching off the page to an imaginary point where no building can possibly stand. He is flying, symbolically, as surely as Superman is flying when he leaps over tall buildings, bursting free of the cage of reality, carrying us with him into superhuman fantasy. Although no rope swinging occurred in the first story, that image echoes in our minds as we read, shaping the scenes that we imagine between the panels. Just talk about to end this chapter, just a little bit right here, skipped ahead. Bill Finger was the first to bring a novelist's questions to bear on a superhero. Why would a man choose such a life? He found the answer in pain. Bill Finger, the dark, boozing, overburdened young writer, saw how the pain of loss could harden into a rage that made a man unlike other men. And as the one real writer in the business, Finger could see the cause of stories instead of just the pieces they were made of. Jerry Siegel might read The Count of Monte Cristo and see sword fights, but Bill Finger saw rage leashed by a vow of revenge. He transferred that to Batman and turned just another Superman knockoff into a character with a soul. Accidentally, he had shined a light on a hidden piece of Superman's own origin. He had found through a storyteller's logic the secret heart of the superhero. So there you go. Just read some of the chapter about Batman. This book goes more into the Golden Age. It goes into Superman. It goes into the behind the scenes. If you liked reading this chapter, if you thought it was interesting, the writing, it was by Gerard Jones. It's called Men of Tomorrow. It's $15, but you could find it cheaper online, I'm sure, with discounts. If you want to know more about comic books early days and the stuff that goes on making them, then I would recommend this book. So leave a comment, tell me what you think. Did you like this? If you didn't, if you're not subscribed, then hopefully you'll subscribe, and talk to you later.